Rosalie had worked for the Harrington family for 8 years, moving through their sprawling mansion with the quiet precision of someone who understood that invisibility was part of her job. She cleaned the rooms, prepared the meals, organized the spaces where important people conducted important lives. She was the kind of employee who anticipated needs before they were expressed. A warm blanket before the evening grew cold, fresh flowers in the study, a cup of tea exactly the way Adam Harrington preferred it. What made Rosalie invaluable, however, was her relationship with Ethan, Adam's young son. The boy had been 7 when his mother died, and Rosalie had filled a void that no formal nanny could quite reach. She listened to his stories, helped him with his homework, held him when nightmares came. In the language of a child's attachment, she was safety. She was home. When Adam announced his engagement to Vivienne, Rosalie felt the shift before she saw it. Vivienne was beautiful in the way that commanded attention, luminous, confident, the kind of woman who photographed well and always said the right things. She spoke warmly to Rosalie, asked about her routines, appeared genuinely interested in integrating into the household. Rosalie wanted to believe in the gesture. She told herself that any woman who loved Adam would eventually understand that caring for Ethan meant respecting the bonds he had already formed. She prepared the mansion for Vivienne's arrival with the same dedication she had always shown. She wanted the transition to be seamless. She did not yet understand that some people are incapable of sharing attention, that some women see loyalty to someone else as a threat. The jeweled brooch disappeared on an ordinary Tuesday. Vivienne discovered it missing from her jewelry box, and the announcement she made was theatrical, designed for maximum impact. She did not ask questions. She pointed. "Rosalie has access to everything," she said, her voice trembling with manufactured distress. "She's in every room. She handles drawers, organizes spaces, knows exactly where everything is kept." The accusation landed like a stone in still water, creating ripples that spread through the mansion in seconds. Adam, standing beside his fiancée, did not question the narrative she was constructing. He simply accepted it. His silence was more damaging than any spoken accusation could have been. Rosalie felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. When the police arrived, she tried to explain, her hands trembling, her voice breaking under the weight of an accusation she did not understand. The officers treated her with barely concealed suspicion, their questions designed to trip her into contradiction. They asked the same things repeatedly, as if repetition might reveal guilt, as if fear was evidence. The media seized the story with hungry intensity, a billionaire robbed by his own employee. The headlines wrote themselves, and in writing themselves, they created a reality that bore no resemblance to truth. Rosalie became the villain in a narrative she had never auditioned for, and the community, eager for drama, quick to judge, accepted the role she had been assigned. She was taken away in front of the neighbors she had known for years. Some of them had praised her work. All of them watched in silence, or worse, with the satisfied expression of people who had always suspected the worst. Behind the scenes, Vivienne worked with methodical precision. She was not content with a simple accusation. She wanted to ensure that Rosalie's reputation was obliterated before the trial even began. She spoke to neighbors, visited local businesses, ensured that everyone heard the same story repeated with consistent outrage. She hired a well-known prosecutor, someone with a reputation for winning at any cost. Then she began the media campaign, subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. Articles appeared in local newspapers suggesting that the evidence against Rosalie was overwhelming. Each piece was carefully worded to seem objective, while actually building an absolute certainty of guilt. The public, reading these stories, began to believe what they had read before they understood it. Vivienne's influence extended to the household staff. Some employees left without explanation, and those who remained became nervous, unwilling to speak. Rosalie could feel their fear, but she could not penetrate it. There were moments when she sensed someone knew something important, but whenever she approached them, they retreated into careful silence. The public defender assigned to her case seemed determined not to care. He was tired, overworked, and Rosalie's situation was simply another file on his overcrowded desk. When she tried to explain the details, he nodded without listening. When she asked him to investigate, he offered vague assurances that meant nothing. She was alone in a way that only the falsely accused truly understand. Ethan watched everything with the confused perception of a child trying to make sense of an adult world that had stopped making sense. He knew Rosalie would never do anything wrong. He had seen her sacrifice for years without asking for recognition. But when he tried to ask questions, the adults around him dismissed or discouraged him. Helena, Vivian, noticed his curiosity with alarm. She could not have the boy contradicting her narrative, so she employed the tools available to her: gifts, distractions, gentle threats. When Ethan tried to talk about what he remembered from the night the brooch disappeared, she warned him firmly to stay quiet. Her tone made the consequence clear, even if she never explicitly stated it. Ethan felt the weight of her demand, but he also felt the injustice of Rosalie's situation pressing against him. The conflict created an anxiety he could not quite articulate. Adam, meanwhile, remained trapped in his own confusion. He had loved Vivian, or at least the version of her she had presented. He had wanted to believe that building a new family was possible. So, when she accused Rosalie, he had accepted the accusation rather than examine it, because examining it would have required acknowledging that he had made a terrible mistake in choosing Vivienne. His silence was the sound of his own cowardice. Rosalie's phone rang late one afternoon, and a woman's voice introduced herself as Emily Chen, a lawyer. Emily explained that she had been following the case through news reports and had serious doubts about the official narrative. She offered her services without expecting payment, driven by something that went beyond professional obligation, a recognition that injustice was being conducted in plain sight. Rosalie, who had learned not to trust anyone, was cautious. But Emily's calm confidence and genuine concern broke through her defenses. For the first time, someone was offering to help, not with suspicion, but with real investment in uncovering the truth. Emily immediately began her parallel investigation. She reviewed the police reports and found them inadequate. Key details glossed over, inconsistencies ignored, the investigation shaped to fit a predetermined conclusion. She examined the timeline and discovered that several people's statements did not align with when they claimed to have been where. She made a list of household employees, tracking down those who had left, attempting to speak with them. Most were too afraid. But Emily persisted with quiet determination, knowing that fear silenced people who possessed crucial information. She also noticed the suspicious detail that Rosalie had discovered: the security camera that had been turned off at precisely the wrong moment. The official investigation had treated this like a coincidence. Emily treated it like a clue. The courtroom was full on the day the trial resumed. Reporters sat in their designated areas, cameras ready. People who had judged Rosalie in advance of any evidence now waited to confirm their prejudgment. Vivian entered with the composure of someone playing the role of grieving victim, and she played it perfectly. When Emily presented her findings, the inconsistencies, the timeline gaps, the suspicious camera, the prosecution's confidence wavered slightly, but not enough. The momentum of public opinion was a powerful force, and Vivian's performance had been flawless. Then, as Emily was speaking, as the judge was beginning to suggest that perhaps the case was less clear than initially believed, a child broke free from his babysitter and ran down the aisle. Ethan, small and trembling, positioned himself beside Rosalie. His voice shook, but it was clear, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I saw Helena hiding something in the office. The night the brooch disappeared, I saw her put it in a box." The silence that followed was absolute. The judge immediately stopped the proceedings. He asked Ethan to repeat his statement, to clarify what he had seen. The boy repeated it, his hand never leaving Rosalie's arm. His honesty was unmistakable. The fear, the certainty, the simple clarity of a child speaking truth. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Vivian's composure cracked visibly, her hands tightening into fists, her breathing quickening. Adam stared at his son as if seeing him for the first time, understanding finally what he had allowed to happen. The judge suspended the session, ordering an immediate investigation into Ethan's testimony. He authorized police to search the mansion thoroughly, paying special attention to any hidden compartments or unusual storage. That night, Adam returned to the mansion in a state of shock. He confronted Vivian directly, and for the first time, he did not accept her deflections. He pressed her, repeated Ethan's words, until she finally broke beneath the weight of no longer being able to deny everything. She admitted to her jealousy of Rosalie, to her resentment of the bond between the boy and the woman who had raised him. She claimed she had not planned what happened, that it had grown from small seeds of insecurity, but she did not admit to taking the brooch, not directly, not completely. Adam left her and began searching the office with desperate purpose. He found what Ethan's memory had preserved, a hidden panel in the wall, a safe concealed behind it. When he opened it, the brooch sat gleaming in the darkness, surrounded by other objects that seemed equally suspicious. His hands shook as he collected the safe. He knew what this meant. He knew what he had done to Rosalie. He brought it to the police station at dawn, his confession pouring out in fragments, his own cowardice, his willingness to believe his fiancée, his failure to protect an innocent woman who had served his family with loyalty for 8 years. The second hearing was attended by a different energy entirely. Emily presented the evidence of the safe, the jewels, the confirmation that everything had been found exactly as Ethan had described. Adam gave testimony admitting his failure, his negligence, his role in allowing injustice to flourish through his silence. The judge listened, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When he finally spoke, his words carried the weight of official judgment. Rosalie was declared innocent. All charges were dismissed immediately and unconditionally. He spoke of negligence in the investigation, of assumptions that had been treated as facts, of the profound harm done to a woman based on nothing more than convenient suspicion. His words were a formal acknowledgement of what had already become obvious, that justice had been corrupted and needed to be restored. Rosalie, who had endured months of fear and isolation, wept openly as the declaration was made. Emily held her hand, and when Ethan broke free again to run to her, embracing her without hesitation, the courtroom fell quiet, moved by the simple emotion of a child who had been willing to speak truth despite his fear. In the weeks that followed, the community's attention shifted entirely. The media that had portrayed Rosalie as guilty now portrayed Vivian as the villain. Public opinion swung with the speed of a pendulum, and people who had once avoided Rosalie began approaching her with apologies and flowers. She accepted their words with grace, but she did not mistake their sudden kindness for true understanding. They had been willing to believe the worst about her when it was convenient. That said more about them than it said about her. Adam faced his own reckoning. He made a public statement acknowledging his failure to verify facts before accepting accusations, admitting that his desire to make his new marriage work had overridden his duty to protect an innocent person. The announcement meant little to Rosalie. What mattered was that her name had been cleared, that the weight of false accusation had been lifted. During this period of recovery, Emily suggested something unexpected. She had contacts with several organizations dedicated to helping women who had been wrongly accused. She wondered if Rosalie might be interested in working with them, using her experience to help others navigate the same nightmare she had survived. Adam, seeking redemption or perhaps simply recognition of the damage he had caused, offered to fund the project. He suggested it become a formal foundation with Rosalie as its director, a position that would give her autonomy, respect, and the opportunity to transform her suffering into something meaningful. Rosalie considered the proposal carefully. Her experience had taught her things about fear, injustice, and resilience that most people never learned. The idea of channeling that knowledge into helping others appealed to something deep within her, a desire to ensure that what had happened to her would not continue to happen to others. She accepted. The foundation took shape over the following months. Rosalie worked with Emily to develop programs, identify women in need of support, and build a network of legal professionals willing to donate their time. The work was challenging and often emotionally difficult, but it gave her life a structure and purpose that had been absent during the trial. She discovered that many women faced situations disturbingly similar to her own, accusations made convenient by circumstances, reputations destroyed by whispers, systems designed to move quickly regardless of truth. For each woman, Rosalie became a living proof that survival was possible, that justice could eventually prevail. Ethan became part of this new phase of her life, visiting the foundation regularly, helping with small tasks, drawing pictures for the women they assisted. His presence reminded her constantly of what her accusation might have cost, not just her own life, but the relationship between a boy and the woman who had raised him. Adam maintained a careful distance, respecting the boundary that Rosalie had established. He provided funding, but he did not attempt to insert himself into her recovery. This restraint was its own form of acknowledgement, an acceptance that some damage cannot be immediately repaired through grand gestures. Emily became Rosalie's partner in the Foundation's work, bringing legal expertise and moral clarity to every case they undertook. The partnership between them, built on mutual respect and the shared understanding of what it meant to seek truth in a world designed to accept convenient lies, became the Foundation's greatest strength. In the final legal hearing, Vivian faced formal charges. The evidence was irrefutable, the witness testimony consistent, the pattern of her behavior documented. She received a sentence of house arrest and the loss of all administrative rights over the family's assets, a public acknowledgement that her actions had been wrong and would carry consequences. Rosalie watched the proceedings from the gallery, feeling not satisfaction but a kind of completion, the moment when a narrative finally aligned with truth, when the system that had initially failed her had been forced to correct itself. Over the following months, as she worked with the Foundation, as she helped women navigate the same legal systems that had nearly destroyed her, as she watched Ethan grow in confidence and security, Rosalie began to understand something essential about survival, that it was not enough simply to endure. Survival had to be transformed into something that served others, something that prevented the repetition of suffering. Her life, which had been nearly obliterated by an accusation that was never true, had been rebuilt into something stronger than it had been before. Not because the accusation no longer mattered, but because she had refused to allow it to be the final word. The mansion, which had been the site of her betrayal, was now the memory of someone else's past. Her present existed in a space she had created, filled with women who understood what she understood, supported by people who had chosen to believe in justice even when the world seemed determined to deny it. As the months became seasons, Rosalie settled into a rhythm of meaningful work, genuine relationships, and the hard-won peace of someone who had walked through darkness and emerged with her integrity intact. She had lost years to fear and accusation, but she had reclaimed her life through resilience, and in reclaiming it, she had found her purpose. The woman who had once moved invisibly through the Harrington mansion now moved with the visibility of someone who had something important to say. And everywhere she went, women listened, drew strength, and began their own journeys toward justice. Truth, delayed and nearly destroyed, had finally prevailed. And in its prevailing, it had illuminated a path, not just for Rosalie, but for everyone willing to follow where justice ultimately leads.